I always remember Returnal as the most compared game ever. Reviewers just couldn't resist comparing it to every possible medium that they could think of. Statements like, Returnal is Control crossed with Doom gameplay, it's got a Remnant from the Ashes setting, and a Hades Metroidvania Dark Souls gameplay loop. I mean, why stop there? What about movie comparisons while you're at it? Sprinkle in some Prometheus and maybe a dash of Groundhog Day too while you're at it. For God's sake, can't a game just be known for being itself? Albeit some of these similarities might be true, I think Returnal deserves the recognition to stand on its own 2 feet as its own entity. Yeah, it's got similarities of other mediums out there, but so have a million other games that have failed miserably in trying to execute them. The developers' housemarque do not fail in that regard. I mean, what do these people think these developers are doing? Calling a meeting to brainstorm ideas about a potential game and coming up with the weirdest concoction of gaming and movie references to make some super hybrid game of games.
The head of a monkey, the antlers of a reindeer, with the head of a meerkat, the body of a walrus, with the head of a sea lion, with the body of porcupine.
So the first thing that I noticed and loved about Returnal was the fluid mechanics and animations, the speed in which we glide through the world, leaping and dashing so seamlessly at a buttery smooth 60 frames a second. It's just a joy. I was almost taking for granted the impressive yet intimidatingly bleak surroundings because I would suggest that you stop and smell the roses, but there aren't any. That's not to say that this dark and looming environment is lacking any colour, because during almost every enemy encounter it's so difficult not to get caught up in all of the dazzling symmetry before the harsh and demanding nature of Returnal reminds you that you're not here to stare at all the pretty colours.
Purple is the color of many pretty things from a lilac.
The gameplay is unadulterated, fast-paced, heart-pounding action with an incredibly satisfying flow to every encounter and a wide variety of enemies, each with their own patterns of attack, and we're forced to learn them really quickly. The screen can be littered with a barrage of colourful bullet hellfire, similar to Housemarque's previous top-down games, but it's transitioned into a third-person action role fantastically well. Staying on the move, racking up combo kills to increase the adrenaline meter will provide temporary buffs with each level, meaning you can ill afford to even blink, and staying focused is essential. You'll be utilising a fairly small amount of base weapons, but each have an alternative firing mode, and they've been cleverly implemented with the best use of the PS5 DualSense controller to date, with half a trigger pull and a full trigger pull giving such a tactile feel to the gameplay, but requiring a certain level of composure to not just aimlessly pull down on the trigger in an attempt to get yourself out of a tricky situation. What about the story, I hear you cry? Well,
it's a long story involving multiple deaths.
we play as Celine, who's crash-landed on planet Atropos after disobeying orders from her employer, Astra, and uncovering the mysteries and events that have taken place prior to Celine's arrival on this planet becomes the goal, as well as finding a method to escape. After your first death in the game, you'll soon realise that death is no escape. Death is the game. Never has a game's death mechanic hooked me in so deep as Returnal has. It goes way beyond the joys of conquering the gauntlet of enemies or finally achieving the bragging rights to say, I finally beat that boss. The procedurally generated world twists and turns itself into new and mysterious shapes, exposing new loot, new enemies, and even uncovering more about the planet and the story that's hidden within. It's a brutal game, make no mistake, but the gameplay loop is a highly addictive one that almost became hard to not look death square in the face and say, fucking yes, I want some more death, and I need to know everything there is to know about this world, and if dying helps me find that out, then so be it. To be honest, that attitude didn't last very long because, like I said, this world is a cruel and unforgiving one. Not only can these alien creatures be a living nightmare to deal with, and as graceful as Celine can be gliding from ledge to ledge, a slight lapse in concentration when simply platforming around what is seemingly the most simple patch of terrain can quickly spell the end of a long and arduous run. I mean, the game is brutally daunting enough, but the noise that Celine makes when she dies is just so grim. Jesus. I'm not gonna lie though, it's pretty infuriating coming so close to completing one of the 6 biomes and having to start all over again, or hoping that you've either collected an artifact that can bring you back to life on the spot, or having visited one of the temporary and costly reconstructors, which are effectively the game's checkpoints. So with death being such an integral and harsh aspect to the experience, there is a little part of me that wished House Marquee took the edge off a little, maybe making Celine a little more of a tough and silent type instead of horrifically screaming like a banshee, or even better, just had a little more flavour to the death sequences. You know, bring a little more life to death.
Don't call it a comeback. I've been here for years.
So I suppose at first I was welcoming death with open arms due to it being built into the roguelike gameplay loop, but you'll never guess what. Surviving is actually the ultimate goal, and gambling and luck can play a huge role in your chances of survival. The procedurally generated world can often dictate your odds of surviving as well, dropping certain items that can make minimal differences to your chances, and other drops that'll give you a massive advantage. That isn't to say that being lucky is essential though, because skill still plays a much bigger role, but if you're lacking the skill, then you better hope luck's on your side. No run will drop the same consumables though, the same enemies or the same weapons, and certain enemies are dealt with more easily by certain weapons, thus making that run much easier. I love this unpredictability. This aspect is present most predominantly in these parasites that offer a very helpful buff or a stat boost of some kind, but they can often come with an equally punishing debuff that can absolutely cripple your run. Eventually I covered Celine from head to toe in parasites because I was hooked on finding out what these pesky parasites had to offer.
Take this stiff and pound it up your fucking ass.
The only real negative that I had to say about the game on release was the odd frame rate drop that appeared in certain areas, as well as whenever I opened or closed a map, but the biggest issue was the lack of save and quit option, meaning my PS5 had to live on rest mode because powering off completely would mean starting your run all over again. Since then though, multiple updates have totally smoothened out the frame rate, the option to save and quit has been added, and there's the Ascension DLC to enjoy now, which offers a co-op mode to the base game, a whole new area to explore with a story spin-off delving deeper into the psyche of Celine, there's a new boss to tackle, and a new arcadey style scoring system that encourages chaining your kills together. Returnal offers incredibly addictive and satisfying combat that's served up in this awe-inspiring world of wonder and terror, and a gameplay loop that almost left me grateful for all the punishment that it was handing out. So if you weren't already taking much notice of House Marquee, then Returnal has well and truly put them on the map with this release. I've been playing for the past 30 hours or so, and I tell you what, and relive those past 30 hours or so of my life, then I absolutely would. And this is all the while I've been completely neglecting the missus. The only genuine break I had from Returnal was her telling me that she's expecting our second child, and this is a true story by the way, but all I could think of was the pleasures of colourfully exploding aliens, and I'm getting back to my PS5.
I'll be right back. We're definitely naming our kid Cher!